Welcome. We are at the City Council Chambers, 10 West State Street, City of Marshalltown. Date is January 10, 2022, and the time's 5:30 p.m. We're here for a regularly scheduled meeting. I need to read a notice to the public that goes like this. The mayor and council welcome comment from the public during any discussion of the agenda items. You're required to step to the mic, state your name and address for the record. Limit your remarks to 3 minutes or less so others may be given an opportunity to speak. Speak clearly and direct your comments to the mayor and council in general and not to any councilor specifically. It's at the discretion of the mayor and council to respond to specific questions and comments or to have the staff respond during the meeting. We are called to order. Would those able please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Very good. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Hoop.
Here.
Isom. Kell.
Here.
Bodyhoff.
Here.
Schneider.
Here.
Thompson.
Here.
Walker.
Here.
Very good. Thank you. And it's time now for mayor, council, and administrative comments. Let me ask for the council comments first, if there are any. Madam Administrator, any from you?
None, Your Honor.
Okay, I get the microphone then, and there are a couple of proclamations. I'd like to read one and have our city clerk read the other. Before I do that, I would like to welcome with an open heart the 3 new city councilors that were sworn in right after the 1st of January. It is nice to have you with us, and it's fun to see the folks that are here and able to join us tonight. I can't tell you how excited I am about this newly constituted council. And then I would like to thank Mike Ladehoff, who's to my left here. He has consented to be the mayor pro tem. In fact, I thought I would be, I was supposed to be way out of state tonight. I forget even what state and what for tonight, so I was afraid that he was going to have to run the first meeting. Those plans canceled, so I got to be there tonight. But I know there are going to be other times this year when Mike has agreed to run the meetings. I figure he's a good candidate to do that for several reasons. He served on this council back when he was in his 30s or early 40s for a term or two, and got to know the lay of the land back then. So he's got that institutional history, and he's also been a really valuable voice and vote here on the city council in the last year. So I thank you, Mike, for agreeing to do that. I appreciate that. Okay, Madam Clerk, would you read one of the proclamations for us, please?
This proclamation is for Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention and Awareness Month. Whereas the United States was founded upon the principle that all people are created with the inalienable right to freedom, and added the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, making slavery illegal. And whereas human trafficking is a modern-day slavery, claiming nearly 40 million victims worldwide, and found in the United States most often in the form of sexual exploitation, forced labor, involuntary servitude, and debt bondage. And whereas this horrific crime, which denies human dignity and freedom and fuels organized crime, exists in our nation, our state, and our own community. And whereas through awareness of its crime is growing, human trafficking continues to go unreported due to its isolating nature, the misunderstanding of its definition, and the lack of awareness about its indicators. And whereas increased community education on how to identify victims of human trafficking, along with increased knowledge of local resources and services for those affected by the criminal actions, can help restore freedom and dignity to the identified survivors, as well as help diminish the number of future victims. And whereas every business, community organization, faith community, family, and individual can make a difference by choosing products that are not made by forced labor, by working to protect our young people from sexual exploitation, by addressing the problem of internet sex trafficking and pornography, and by becoming more aware of the problem and possible solutions. Whereas the city of Marshalltown joins the Iowa Network Against Human Trafficking and Slavery, and their dedication to providing community outreach and education, legislative advocacy, training, promotion of services to survivors of human trafficking, in collaboration with law enforcement. Now therefore it be resolved that Mayor Joel Greer and the city do hereby proclaim the month of January as Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention and Awareness Month, and encourage all citizens to become more informed on this growing problem, to be vigilant and report suspicious activity, and to work towards solutions to end trafficking in all forms of the community. If you see something that doesn't look right, take action and call National Human Trafficking Hotline at 888-373-7888. I'd like to present this to Chief Michael Tupper.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it.
Thank you. As the chief is getting back to his area, I'd like to say that the Rotary Club was the beneficiary of a really interesting program about this exact topic. About 6 weeks ago, one of the lieutenants came to present, and it was gripping and informative, and it's here. It is in central Iowa. It's in small towns in Iowa, so it really is a serious problem. So I'm proud to be able to proclaim that that's something that needs our attention. I gave Alicia the longer one. I'll see if I can speed read the second one. This one is a proclamation as follows. Whereas the year 2022 will mark the 50th anniversary of Heart of Iowa Big Brothers, Big Sisters, whose mission it is to create and support one-to-one mentoring relationships that ignite the power and promise of youth while serving the youth of Marshall County. Whereas January 22 will mark the 20th anniversary of the National Mentoring Month, an annual campaign to focus attention on the need for mentors, as well as how each of us can work together to increase the number of the mentors to help ensure positive outcomes for our young people. Whereas Marshalltown, Iowa honors volunteer members who support the young people by showing up for them every day and demonstrating their commitment to helping them thrive. Whereas mentoring programs like the Heart of Iowa Big Brothers, Big Sisters, Marshalltown, Iowa make our communities and our state stronger by driving impactful relationships and increasing social capital for young people, and provide invaluable support networks. Whereas mentoring plays a pivotal role in the career and exploration and supports workplace skills by helping young people set career goals, equipping mentors with the skills needed to support the professional growth of young people, and drives positive outcomes for young people and businesses. And whereas quality mentoring provides healthy relationships, communications, positive self-esteem, emotional well-being, growth of a young person, and their relationships with other adults. Students meet regularly with their mentors, are more than 52% likely than their peers to skip a day of school. And youth who face an opportunity gap but have a mentor are 55% more likely to be enrolled in college than those who do not have a mentor. Whereas youth who regularly meet with their mentors are 46% less likely than their peers to start using drugs, and 27% less likely to start drinking. Whereas almost half of today's young adults report having a mentor in their youth, and those rates appear to have been rising steadily over the past decades. And whereas National Mentoring Month is the time of year to celebrate, elevate, and encourage mentoring across our state and recruit caring adult mentors in Marshalltown, Iowa. And now therefore Mayor Joel Greer of Marshalltown do hereby proclaim January 20th as National Mentoring Month in Marshalltown, Iowa. And I thank those who give their time to make a difference through youth mentoring. I know our excellent director is here tonight. Would you like to address the group as part of this before you receive this proclamation?
We are celebrating our 50th year of mentoring here in Marshall County, which is quite a long length of time when you're looking at being a small nonprofit in the community that we have. I would say very humbly that we are just so grateful for the support that we've received throughout these years from numbers and numbers of people who have served as mentors, as well as board members and directors and staff people. There is a great impact that happens just because a child has someone who's going to spend one-to-one focused attention on them, and they begin to thrive and they begin to have successes that they would not have had before. I think each of us can say that we probably had at least one person that mentored us, that said the right thing at the right time, that guided us, that did something unusual with us that we didn't have an opportunity to without them. Those people we need to say thank you January 29th is actually Thank Your Mentor Day. All of us probably could take a step back and think about who those people were and say thank you, but also realize that we all have roles to continue to be mentors for others as well. Thank you for your time. We appreciate what has happened in Marshall County, and we continue for a long time past my time as director. So thank you very much.
Come on up if you would.
Thank you.
Just anecdotally, my wife was a big sister, and to that I was lucky enough to have two young little brothers, one of whom asked me to be the best man in his wedding. The mentors get more out of those programs than the kids do. I mean, the statistics are great for the kids, but it truly is a beneficial thing for an adult to do something like that. So enough about that. Thank you for all your work, and you don't need to stick around for the rest of the meeting. It could be a long one tonight. We're at that point where we should ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda, out of which we are taking number 7. So minus number 7, does anybody move to approve the consent agenda tonight?
Move for approval.
Thank you. Is there a
Second, Your Honor.
Very good. Roll call.
Hoop,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Lottie Hoff,
Yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Walker,
yes,
Thank you. That carried. And Dex, if you want to, if it's easier not to have to unmute and that sort of thing, we'll take a thumbs up as a yes, and we'll record it that way too. Thanks for being able to join us by Zoom. Very good. That carried on to resolutions. The first one of which in item G is number 1. Would you read that one for us?
She's got to read
Oh, you have to read all. I forgot that. Yeah, back to speed reading again, Alicia.
approve the minutes for the December 27th, 21 meeting, a bill list in the amount of $1,038,900, $1,038,984.13. Approve liquor license renewals for Seven Rails Liquor Store at 120 East Main Street, Dave's at 207 East Main Street, Jiffy at 111 South 3rd Avenue, Rumors at 309 South 12th Avenue Place. Approve November 2021 financial statements, receipt of building permit report, December 2021, and the annual report. Civil Service new hire list for custodian. Accept the term date for Mike Gowdy on the Solid Waste Commission as December 31st, 2021, and appointment of Dex Walker to the Solid Waste Commission for a term of January 1, 22 to December 31st of 26. Resolution approving a settlement agreement with John and Lisa Blaybaum regarding 108 to 110 West Main Street. Resolution approving a sub-recipient agreement with Youth and Shelter Services for the Department of Justice Community-Oriented Policing Services Grant.
Very good. Thank you. Then on to item G1.
Resolution approving the purchase of 11.40 acres of land from the Iowa Department of Transportation for $74,000.
Your Honor, should we go back to number 7?
Oh, yes, we do. Well, no, I think that was removed for another reason, but our Ms.
No
Reagan.
longer necessary as the original piece of equipment is available.
Thank you. I'm glad you caught that, though. You are the right man for the job for the pro tem, I tell you. Okay. Is there anybody who'd like to move for approval of that first resolution that has been read?
I'll move for approval.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Very good. Discussion.
This is going to be probably one of many items that crosses councils. So this was first introduced back in, I think it was May or June of 2021. The land that the Fisher Community Center and the YMCA Cultural Center sits on, which is really shown kind of with the creek here in this graphic, is 11.4 acres, and it's all owned by the Iowa DOT. Back in June, we had discussed that the city could go ahead and offer or basically accept the land at fair market value from the DOT, and that is actually where we are tonight. So the DOT is offering us the ability to buy this entire parcel with the portion of the creek included for $74,000. The intent is us not to be the future owner, but then to basically record another plat of survey that actually does make these parcel splits, and then convey that property at the fair market value price determined by the DOT to both the YMCA Cultural Center and the Fisher Governor Foundation for what was previously known as the Fisher Community Center, now known as the Marshalltown Arts and Civic Center. And so this is the first step. If you would like to approve this, then we will send in our notice and our signed agreement along with the check for $74,000, and then wait for approximately 60 days before this goes through the whole chain of approvals that are required at the state level, ending with the governor's office.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the council?
Your Honor,
Yes, sir.
so we're buying this just to turn around and sell it?
Yes, so the DOT process that we're using, this is basically a remnant piece of right-of-way. And so they basically have the opportunity to offer it to the local government unit first. If the local government unit says no, then they put it out on the open market. We have an interest in acquiring this rather than letting it go to the open market because of the two very iconic buildings that are on both parcels. Well, one parcel now, two parcels to be in the future, and making sure that the building's owners can retain the land underneath it.
And how are you suggesting we do that legally? That we only allow them to be the one that purchase it?
As long as they pay fair market value, that is all that needs to happen, and the DOT has done appraisals to determine fair market value.
And what happens if another entity wants to enter that bidding process?
Well, there wouldn't be a bidding process. So because they're willing to pay the fair market value and are not asking for anything less than that, we can work with them directly. The city's objective in selling property is to get fair market value for it, and that is what both entities are saying that they will do to own the land.
So we're buying it for $74,000, both or
All of it.
the whole
Yep.
10 acres. We'll split them out, and then we're gonna break even on this? Or are we selling, is fair market value just the property, or is it the buildings also?
Fair market value was determined by the DOT appraisal, looking at, I think, both the buildings and looking at the value of the land with the building. So the buildings are owned by private ownership. It's just the land that has the ownership issue. So the DOT does not own either building. It is just the land. So we're trying to resolve that situation, get the land with the owner of the buildings to make sure we don't have this situation in the future.
And then remind me, why are we doing this now and not waiting till 2054 when the lease runs out?
Because there is a major expansion or major renovation project happening at the Marshalltown Arts and Civic Center right now. This is a crucial piece to that puzzle for them. And then the YMCA has discussed there being future improvements to the cultural center and wanting to resolve this before their time of improvements as well.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You bet. Any other questions or comments by council members? Hearing and seeing none, I'll open it to public comment. Hearing and seeing nobody stepping to the microphone, I'll call for the roll.
Thompson,
No.
Walker,
Yes.
Hoop,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Lottiehoff,
Yes.
Schneider.
Yes.
Very good. That carried. On to the second resolution, please.
Resolution accepting bid and authorizing the award of contract for the Creekside Estates bid project number ECO 21004 in the city of Marshalltown, Iowa for the amount of $684,161.75.
Floor is open for motions.
Move for approval.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion?
Good evening, Heather Thomas, Public Works Director. In front of you today, we're asking for a motion to approve the bids that we received on the Creekside Estates project. This was on the last agenda. We did have some last day changes as far as making sure that it was in line with the approved development agreement. We talked through those last time, but we do have those in writing and worked with the city attorney to get all of those resolutions and stuff updated. So we are asking for your vote this evening and be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions by council?
Your Honor, if I may. Heather, what counselor brought this back on the agenda? Because I understand it was voted down last meeting when I was absent.
Yes, we worked with the city attorney, and there is part of the policy that allows substantive changes to the resolution be made. Roger did make those changes, and that's what's allowed it to come back tonight.
So falls into that category of a different iteration. So if we change one color from red to blue, it makes it legal to come back, even though the council voted it down.
It does fall with under the iterational change, yes.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome. Other questions or comments by the council? Otherwise, mic is open for the public comment. Roll call on this one.
Schneider,
Yes.
Thompson,
No.
Walker,
Signaled yes.
Hoop,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Lottie
Yes.
Very good. That carried as well. On to the third resolution, please.
Resolution in support of the downtown housing grant application for 32 to 34 West Main Street, the Hopkins Building.
Move for approval, Your Honor.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion?
Yes, just to introduce this, the state of Iowa, with some of the American Rescue Plan funds that they had received, created a downtown housing grant program for which each city can apply for one project that has to be kind of in their downtown area, creating new upper story housing units. Because we have been working to put all the pieces of funding together for the Hopkins Building, we are recommending that we apply for this for the Hopkins Building. And the second part of the resolution contains that if we were to be awarded the grant, we would be able to accept it and move forward with those contracts and agreements. How this fits in is this is a $300,000 grant. As we'll talk about the next two items, between the Hopkins and the Willards total, that TIF obligation was looking to be $750,000. If we receive the downtown housing grant, that then goes down to $450,000. But I will say this is the last of the grants that appears to be out there for this project. And so we do plan to start the process to amend our urban renewal plan for that TIF agreement at the next meeting and get that development agreement started at that $450,000 amount, knowing that if we don't get the grant, we'll be coming back. But I feel very confident that this is going to be awarded.
Thank you. Questions or comments for Jessica about it? Any public comment about it? Let's do the roll call.
Walker,
Vote is yes.
Hoop,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Lottie
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Very good. That carried as well. On to the next resolution.
Resolution endorsing Community Catalyst Building Remediation Grant application for Janelle and Joseph Carter for 32 to 34 West Main Street, Hopkins Building.
So moved, Your Honor.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Yes, so there's two grant applications, both called Catalyst grants, both for $250,000 that are coming up before you. The first one to separate is the final $250,000 remaining of the initial $1 million tornado recovery catalyst that the Iowa Economic Development Authority granted to us. And so we are recommending that this be applied towards the first floor improvements, which will create 1 to 2 new commercial spaces that have not been in existence since the tornado happened. So as you can see in the application, this is going to be matched with their private equity investment and loans, as well as then totaling out to their total costs there as well. So you can kind of see what is going to be spent on the first floor. And so the second floor and third floor upper story will be on the next resolution.
Thank you. Questions or comments for Jessica?
Your Honor.
Yes.
Jessica, it's 3 retail places, right? Downstairs, it's 3 retail spaces?
Yeah, this is just, to clarify, this is just the Hopkins building.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All
so
right.
not the Willards building.
Okay.
So,
All right.
yeah, just Hopkins.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You bet. Other council questions or comments? Public comments or questions? Roll call.
Lottie
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Walker,
Thumbs up? Yes.
Hoop,
Yes.
Kell.
Yes.
That carried as well. On to the fifth resolution, please.
Resolution endorsing Community Catalyst Upper Story Housing Building Remediation Grant application for Janelle and Joseph Carter at 32 to 34 West Main Street in the Hopkins Building.
Move for approval.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Discussion on this one?
Yes, so this is for the upper story portion, which will be creating 8 rental units. And I'll just to kind of go through a little bit more of the application. This has a little bit more to it than the last one. This is where we would be looking at the Catalyst grant for $250,000. This is $250,000 of $500,000 directed specifically at upper story housing. And so that's sort of the difference between those two sources of funds. We're also looking at there being, we've counted the $300,000 in here, as well as the Hopkins building was also awarded a $100,000 Main Street Challenge grant. Another item that is included in here for your reference is the new construction incentive, and I'm sure you're wondering, where is their new construction? The plan is to build a elevator vestibule, basically, on the backside of the Hopkins building that will provide elevator access up to the second and third floors of the Hopkins building, and then also the second floor of the Willards building to what will be the back unit there as well. And so that is something that as we were going through things, looking at the numbers, it made sense that that would be considered new construction because it is constructing something new that increases the accessibility of that building. There's, again, private equity investment and debt here. We've penciled in the $150,000 of TIF on this one. And then we have also then noted that they have applied for the federal and historic tax credits, but those don't actually total into the revenue total as they're considered equity. They're not really considered a revenue for this. And then finally getting down to the MCBD incentive grants, those both total as $82,000. So the upper story is more than a $2 million, upper stories I should say, are more than a $2 million project when you break it down. And so that's what we have here today.
Very good. Questions or comments by the council for Jessica? And by the public? Roll call on this one.
Thompson,
Yes.
Walker,
Thumbs up, yes.
Hoop,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Lottie
Yes.
Snyder.
Yes.
Very good. That carried as well. I thank the Carters publicly for this initiative and for being here tonight and having their contractor here. If you haven't seen the sign that's out front of that building, it's a nice picture of what's to lie ahead, and it will take one of these corners that got hurt badly like several others and turn it into a real showplace. So that's pretty exciting stuff. Let's go on to the last resolution then.
Resolution designating the city as a developer for the purposes of determining sewer connection fees.
This is probably the most exciting one. Heather, how about, well, let me call for a motion first.
I'll motion to approve.
Thank you. Any second?
Second.
Discussion.
Good evening, Heather Thomas, Public Works. The city has undertaken several development agreements on some different projects in the past, and we've realized as we're reviewing those and we're getting to the next stage of actually building houses, outside of the development agreement, we did not specify kind of which side of the ordinance that the sewer connection fee would be on. Our ordinance currently states that if the developer is the one installing the sanitary sewer, that connection fee for that homeowner is $300. If this is a project where the city has gone in and installed sanitary sewer, that connection fee is $3,200. So that's quite a big difference. And again, this is just to clarify intent, provide transparency and equality amongst all of these projects that have been approved. So the 4 projects we're talking about specifically covered under this resolution is the Washington Street extension. It was kind of an infill, kind of off of 9th Street. Also the Southridge Estates subdivision, the Creekside Estates subdivision, and then also the future South 7th Ave extension. So we're asking for your approval tonight to designate that to be a $300 connection fee.
Questions or comments for Heather? Public comment? Roll call.
Lottie Hoff,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Walker,
Thumbs up, yes.
Hoop,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
That carried as well. Very good. Gee, it's fun to be talking about 4 separate developments like that for all the multiple housing things available here. So good work, Heather. Thank you. On to item H, discussion, the first one of which is the update on the Safety Quiet Zone project.
Yes, we have Greg Broussard here tonight to do a quick little presentation, and just to warn Dex, we're going to have to minimize your screen, so you will need to unmute yourself if you would like to speak to anything.
Mayor, Council, thank you for allowing me to be here tonight. What I wanted to do was give you an update. I know we have some new council members as well of the quiet zone and where we're at in the process, and then hopefully get a little bit of direction at the end of the project. So what I want to do is just begin with some background. Review a quiet zone, review what it is, what it isn't, and how we potentially implemented a quiet zone for the city of Marshalltown. So the city of Marshalltown, what we're looking at is 4 main crossings. You'll have, working from west to east, we'll have 12th Street, 6th Street, 2nd Street, and 12th Ave. So 4 crossings. Each one of those crossings, this is some background for you guys. So each crossing has 42 trains per day, roughly 21 during from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and then 20 at night. Federal regulations require each one of those trains to sound their horns between 15 and 20 seconds in a variable pattern. So if you add all that up, essentially we're getting train noise for 41 minutes a day in Marshalltown. And that's combined for all the crossings put together. So what a quiet zone is, quiet zone is a way to quiet those train horns as it comes through town. And it doesn't mean that there will be no train horns. It means that if we do the right steps and follow the right process, we will, on a traditional crossing, we would have no train horns unless the engineer sees something that's a safety issue. He sees somebody on the track. They still have the right to blow their horns during that point. Or we would still hear train noise in the rail yard itself. It doesn't quiet the rail yard. So a little bit of information on the background on quiet zones. So prior to 2005, when the full code of how we establish a quiet zone was enacted, individual towns started going and trying to require Whistleband Ordinances. And what the Federal Railroad Association, or the FRA, found was that was very unsafe. There wasn't a defined rules as far as how that whistle bands worked. And so they, at that point, implemented this new rule that said whistles must be blown. In order for whistles not to be blown, certain safety measures must be installed. And those safety measures must be paid for by the local jurisdiction or the city. If the railroad is blowing their horns and the railroad maintains maintains signals, that meets all federal requirements. But to quiet those, that then becomes on the local jurisdiction to quiet those. A brief overview of two terms I'll use tonight. So the first one is the National Significant Risk Threshold Index. What this is an average number. The FRA has looked at every crossing in the whole United States and come up with an average risk number for that crossing. And so what we need to do is we need to look at a quiet zone of just our 4 crossings. If we look at adding the safety measures that we're going to look at doing, and the average number for our 4 crossings is less than that national risk index, then our quiet zone will qualify. So now the question is, how do we get there? What safety measures can we install at each crossing to get our average lower, our combined average for our 4 crossings lower than the national threshold? The FRA has done a lot of studies, a lot of background, and determined these items called supplemental safety measures, or SSMs. The 4 that we really looked at for Marshalltown are the most prevalent ones in the United States as well. One could be a full crossing closure. One would be to take a crossing to a one-way conversion, putting in 4 quadrant gates. So instead of having 2 gates like you normally would have, you'd have 4. So essentially it doesn't allow people to go around a gate. And then probably the most prevalent one would be the bottom one, the approach gates with raised median. If you think through 12th Ave right now, that's set up very similar to that. It's got the medians on here. I do have a picture of 12th Ave, so you can look at that. That's traditionally the cheapest and most effective way to meet the safety measures. By putting that long median in, you're now not allowing cars to swing out and around that gate. There's minimum median lengths that we need to maintain as we go through it as well. Now that we've looked at a little bit of the background, I want to talk through the actual quiet zone we'd be looking at for Marshalltown. So we have 4 crossings, like I said, and the rules look at how far out and away from the crossings we are. So by doing the 4 crossings in town, the blue line shows the length of the quiet zone that we would establish. So it would all be out west of town, and then it would stop short, just short of 18th Ave, because there is a spur line there that we're not able to handle as part of this one. So what I wanted to do was look at each individual crossing, show where we're at, what we've come to. I know we've seen some of these displays that I'll show before. What has changed since the last time we were up here? We met with the Federal Railroad Association and the UP Railroad. All of their staff came into town, and we did what was called a diagnostic review. We walked every single intersection, and we went quadrant by quadrant and looked at what had to happen in that quadrant to establish a quiet zone. So what we have done is we've updated the drawings, the concept drawings. We've updated some of the cost estimates based on that diagnostic review with all of the different entities involved. So 12th Ave is going to be probably the easiest one. There's existing medians already installed, and we need to do some minor improvements there. We need to repair a little bit of the medians, extend them a couple of feet just to make new rules work, put some signage in. We do need to do a driveway replacement on it'll be the northwest corner. There's a driveway that is too close to the tracks there. It enters a single commercial lot. There's availability and space on that lot to adjust the driveway. And then you can see a total cost of this intersection at approximately $144,000. This is a map that kind of shows it. So the blue that you'll see on the outsides, and I'll go over this one a little bit more detail, but all the colors match all the displays. The blue would be new curb and gutter we'd be putting in. Green would be either new sidewalk or new driveway. And red would be pavement that we take out that we don't put back in. So the red on this one would be the driveway access. And so you're seeing it, we're moving it further north, and it actually would line up with Madison Street, which would be a benefit for that safety aspect as well. And then you see a little bit of orange there right at the end of the medians. Just to get those medians, the median has to go to the gate or just beyond it. So we have to make sure we get there to meet the federal requirements. So I'm intentionally skipping 2nd Street because that one is the one we need to probably have some discussion on. 6th Street. So looking at the recommendations there. So looking at installing median islands, pavement widening, trail installation, advanced signage warning, and then some of the impacts would be the driveway access to S&T trucking on the northwest corner. That would need to be turned into probably right in, right out would work, but based on the truck traffic, it needs to be closed because there's a loading dock there, so we can't allow right in, right out would work for normal pedestrian cars, but it won't work for a semi. So looking at adjusting or shifting the loading dock to the north side of the building. And this one has a cost estimate of $543,000. Couple of reasons why this one's higher than 12th Ave has to do with the UP side. So as we get into the railroad, the UP gets to put some of their improvements on us, and some of those improvements are going to be replacing the crossing panels. Every 8-foot section of panel is about $25,000, and we've got the southern track. It fully needs to be replaced. It's an old wood crossing panel, so if we're going to be doing it, the UP is going to ask us to update that, and also have to do some timing signal adjustments for how the trains come in there and when they signal how they signal the signals at different speeds. That isn't on those tracks today, so we have to add that, and that would be a cost as well that we didn't know about before. Through the diagnostic review, the UP made us aware of that. Yes.
I got a question about the pedestrian or bike crossings. Is there a crossing guard for those as well that would be installed, or is the current crossing guard stopping their traffic?
So the way that the UP views pedestrian crossings, if the pedestrian or the FRA views pedestrian crossings, if the crossing is included in the road crossing. We don't have to do a separate treatment on that pedestrian crossing. It's not required. Now, that being said, if the city determined that they wanted to do a treatment there, we could. We don't have that included in the cost because it's not required to meet to get the safety zone numbers that we need. So this is an example there, and you can kind of see the green is the trail crossing, and it kind of does a lot of S shapes because we want to have those pedestrians crossing the tracks at 90 degrees or as close to 90 as we can get them. 12th Street improvements, same thing, kind of like a broken record here. Installation of medians, pavement widening, signage. Some of the impacts would be on the northwest corner. The AEA driveway needs to be closed. And working with Jessica and talking with the AEA, I believe they have a project where they're looking to repair or replace some of their pavement, and they were planning on closing that driveway anyways. So it's not really an impact, but just wanted to make sure everybody's aware of it. And there you can see the costs at the 240, and then here's the picture. So this one, the blue is adding a little bit of pavement widening on, putting a new curb. Orange would be the new medians installed. Red, we'd take out a section of the AEA driveway, and then the green would be replacing some of the trail crossing there. So those are the easy ones that we are able to install a predetermined SSM or supplementary safety measure, and it makes a lot of sense, and it doesn't have a lot of impacts. 2nd Street, as we started to look at that, because of its configuration, the diagnostic review team, which consisted of myself, public works staff, FRA, and the UP, the ultimate consideration there, we came up with 2 options. One is a full closure, closing 2nd Street altogether, and then option 2 was to leave it open and do nothing there, because by the time we do the safety measures at the other 3 intersections and do nothing at 2nd, our average of the 4 still puts us below that national risk index, so it qualifies our quiet zone. Those are the 2 options that the diagnostic team reviewed. We did look at a 3 of installing SSM measures there. It was not a viable option because of driveway locations and having to close access off. The preferred option that the diagnostic team is recommending would be full closure based on the safety of the crossing. It's as you look at it from an aerial perspective, it is a very wide crossing, especially with the amount of pedestrians on it as well. So we can do either one. And so that's a lot of the big discussion here. So closing it, I know there's going to be a lot of questions and a lot of conversation about that. But we wanted to bring it forward and have some discussion on that. And I can answer any questions on that one. I do have one final slide. I'll jump to that just so we go over next steps, and then I think we come back to 2nd, and I can answer any questions on that one. Just the next steps. Once a decision's made, what do we do and how do we move forward? Not going to go through all of this, but essentially once we make a decision, we'll develop plans and specifications, and then we have to notify the FRA, the railroad, of our intent to do a quiet zone, and we'll send our plans when they do that. They'll have a period of time to respond back with their comments. We'll address their comments. Then we'll build all the improvements, and then we'll send notification back out to all the same parties and tell them the improvements are built, our quiet zone will be established on X date, and then they have 21 days to review the installed measures. And if there are no responses or adjustments in those 21 days, then the quiet zone would be implemented at that point. So going back to 2nd Street, I know there's going to be some questions or some comments. Wanted to be able to address those.
I've got some. Has there been traffic analysis done to know how many cars cross, how many pedestrians cross, and what impact there will be on Center Street and 6th Street with additional traffic?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the traffic counts to date, we've been using the current DOT data. One of the things that the FRA will require us to do is 6 months prior to implementing everything, we'll have to do an updated traffic study. We haven't done that because we didn't want it to fall out of the 6-month time period. So we've been using the DOT data, which has cars, it doesn't have pedestrians on it. As far as car traffic, it's 700 cars a day is what the DOT is saying, which could easily be rerouted to either the 6th Street Viaduct or the Center Street Viaduct. And the DOT data, just for reference, is, I believe it's 10 years old. So as we looked at it, the Y was there, it was active, so there hasn't been a lot of change in that 10 years, which is why we felt comfortable looking at those numbers.
I don't mean to ask all the questions, but has anybody from the Y been talked to, or Spawn and Rose, perhaps Emerson? I know a lot of people use that route for going to the Y over lunch. I didn't know if any of the businesses have been contacted about their opinion.
Yes, I emailed Carol Hibbs, who's here tonight, and just let her know that this was going to be on the agenda with the specifics about 2nd Street. And I believe the response was, we are supportive of the quiet zone, but would like to see 2nd Street remain open. So I think I got that right, yes. But I haven't called any of the businesses in the area.
Okay, thanks.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I guess I'm shocked that once the other 3 are done, that this one, that should have the most young child pedestrian traffic because the aquatic center, we meet the requirement.
Yep.
And we've got kids at risk crossing this.
So that's a very good point, Gary. So it's one of those things that the average for the 4 get it lower. Now, if that being said, the city council says, you know what, we are still concerned about that. We can do improvements here and still count it as open. We could put medians in. We could do some sort of pedestrian treatment on the open one, not count it for any of the safety criteria, but still do some sort of safety measure installation.
Okay, I know I'm a dinosaur, but growing up in this town, we had 2 viaducts, handled all the traffic. Now we have 4. If it costs $50,000 for a full closure, why wouldn't we just close all 4 of them? At $50,000 apiece, spend $200,000 instead of $1 million, put a pedestrian bridge over 2nd so the kids can still get to the aquatic center. Were alternatives looked at all?
Yes, so we did look at the option of closing all 4 crossings, I guess, was never an option as we looked at that from direction. And so I guess that could be a question from city council, but I definitely could not advise closing all 4 crossings.
Why not?
Because you have viaducts, but you still have normal pedestrian or normal vehicular traffic that you're using those side streets, and the congestion on not having done the traffic analysis or looking at, if we start closing all those other railroad crossings, where does that traffic go? How does it route? We need to start looking at those roads and how it affects those as well too, which is why right now I can't have a response for that. Or I don't have one.
But you have recommendations based on traffic counts that you admitted are 10 years old.
For 2nd Street, the rest of them, the DOT did new traffic counts this spring that we're using that have for the other 3 streets.
So that is current.
The other 3, yes, because the DOT does traffic counts every 4 years, and Marshalltown was counted. It would have been March or April of 2021.
And do those traffic counts show what can be increased without changes to those streets?
No, they don't.
Okay, they just show.
They're just counts.
Just counts, okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Your Honor.
There's still audible noise at these intersections, right? Isn't there a faux horn or something that's not as loud?
No, you would hear the clang of the bells of the it's actually called the signal bell. They'd be put on the top, so you'd hear like I can't even think of the sound, but you'd still hear an audible like clanging, but it wouldn't be like a wayside horn where it actually mimics the sound of a train horn.
Okay.
So, some of us that have been at the crossings in Ames that has the quiet zones do hear some noise if you're close to the tracks.
Yep.
We don't need to have that kind of a
So
short-term signal.
Ames implemented, when they first did their quiet zone, they implemented what was called wayside horns, which essentially was you put instead of the train blowing their horn, you put speakers up that have a directed sound right at the road and the sidewalk that's the same level, the same decibel level as the train. The city of Ames has since taken those out and went to quad gates at those crossings. I don't know why. I believe it had to do with maintenance on those.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't aware that those weren't still blowing over there.
No. Yeah, they've on Duff. They removed those and they put in quad gates.
Okay, very good.
Your Honor, when everyone else has had a chance to ask, I have another question.
Yeah. Any other counselors before we go back to Gary? Back to you.
When this whole thing first started, it wasn't about safety, it was about quality of life. And I wish Councilman Ison was here tonight, because we had several conversations, it was all about quality of life. So you're proposing to us that we spend almost $1 million to get rid of 41 minutes of horns. I'm looking not at the safety anymore, just quality of life, the sound. So $1 million to eliminate 41 minutes of horns. What did the UP say? How many minutes of horns do they have in their switching yard? Because the difference between us and Ames is we have a switching yard right in the middle of our city.
Yep.
So I guess I want to know, $1 million to eliminate 41 minutes, are we still going to have an hour and a half of horns in the city? Do you know what that number is, Greg?
I don't know. I don't think the UP definitely doesn't keep track of horns in the switching yard. And if you think about a crossing versus a switching yard, one thing that through talking with the UP, that is a difference. When they come to a crossing, that train has between 15 and 20 seconds. It's a long, short, long that they have to require. And then typically in the switch yard, it's going to be short, little itty bitty bumps of just a small train noise. That's not going to be continued extended like you would at a crossing. So that's kind of the thought process. We can't control their yard through any federal regulation.
I understand that, but I'm just saying, $1 million to eliminate 41 minutes for a quality of life thing, I'm sorry, I could see spending $1 million to eliminate the smell at Swift's versus, getting rid of the train sound. But
And a lot of times, as we work through quiet zones throughout the entities, the quality of life, also looking at the developmental options. Because a lot of times if you have a site selector coming to town that's looking for a place near downtown, you have a lot of space for growth and revitalization in downtown. You've got a major site selector that's coming to try to find stuff. They hear that train noise. They're not from Marshalltown. They didn't grow up with the train noise. That they're going to hear it constantly, and it will automatically start reducing points that Marshalltown gets. So that's one of those benefits of quality of life too, is expanding your potential for development adjacent to the railroad as well. So I personally am from Marshalltown. I grew up with the train noise. Sometimes I can't hear it, but I do fully understand living in Ames, where now I've got a train not that far from my house, but I hear it all the time. So I think it's also one of those of, a lot of times people from town are used to it, and why change, but also look at the benefits of what it can do for your development.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You bet. Other
Thanks, Greg.
counselor comments? All right, let's see if the public has any. Very good. Thank you for the update.
Well, I think what we were actually looking for is it option 1 or option 2 that you would like to move forward with? And so if there's anybody who'd like to make a motion for either one of those, we'd like to see that there are at least 4 people, 4 council members in support of option 1 or option 2.
This is just for the second street crossing though, option 1, option 2, or what are our options?
Correct, just for Second Street, talking about option 1 being the full closure as is shown on the slide that Greg just had up, and option 2 doing nothing to the crossing. This doesn't preclude us from coming back and talking about what are some of those supplementary measures that we could do to try and enhance some of the safety there, but not as part of the full FRA equation.
Yep, that's correct.
So Your Honor, clarification on that. So you're saying you're already planning on moving ahead with the other 3 intersections?
Yes, we have the funding in place, and the direction has been to move forward. So ultimately, we're trying to get this project to the point where we can put it out to bid. And this is the final decision needed for that.
This was all approved prior, and money allocated for it.
Right.
But the question was at Second Street.
I'd like to go on the record that Second Street not be closed, that we look at options. I just as soon not have the Y only have one access into it. Plus, I've seen the traffic that goes through there and the amount of kids going to the swimming pool and everything, let alone the Y, that I think that'd be the wrong way to go.
And we did just for some reference, I looked at timing. If you were a pedestrian and you started at the intersection of Madison and Second, and today you head directly south, and the timing of your walk, on an average pace to get to the front door of the Y. On today would be 5 to 7 minutes. If you have to go around, it's going to about double your time. If you have to head west on Madison to the viaduct, go up to the viaduct, there's some stairs that come down to Washington, and then you take Washington to the Y, it would about double your time. It would go from 5 to 7 to 9 to 13. So
Just out of curiosity, maybe I'm the only one that actually has done the same timing, but in a car. Did you happen to
we
do
didn't
that?
look at the car timing so much because a lot of times what we look at is, will the roads handle the cars? The short trip period for a car I'm not as worried about as I am a pedestrian.
I'd be worried about people illegally crossing the tracks to save the time, so.
And that was one of the things that we looked at, that I think it would have to be definitely a coordination with the UP for fence installation along there. But how do you fully stop somebody from crossing that too?
So, Mike, did you make a motion?
Yeah, can we consider that a motion?
I would make that as a motion that we do not close Second Street.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Very good. Any,
And I would be in favor of not closing it and looking at somewhere down the road of improving it.
very good. Unless anybody, does
Can I
anybody?
make a comment?
You may, you bet.
I also wanted to just comment in support of keeping Second Street open that I don't currently believe Center Street Viaduct to be a real quality reroute. There's a lot of our constituents that are concerned with the state that Center Street Viaduct is currently in.
Thank you. Any other counselors? And otherwise, I'll call for public comment again on it. Let's go ahead and take the roll.
Kell,
Yes.
Lottiehoff,
Yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
Thompson,
No.
Walker,
But we can't see you now, Dex, so we'll need to have you unmute on that one.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Hoop,
Yes.
Very good. That carried as well. On to the next discussion item then. That's review of real property disposal policy.
Yes, this policy is becoming a necessity just because of some legal concerns that we've had, as well as then we have a lot of property to dispose of, and just having everybody on the same page of where we're at. So I included in the packet all of the kind of past policies that sort of guided things in the past, and you can see how they've come together in this policy for the sale of surplus real property. And so we have to follow Iowa code, but there's some variability within Iowa code of how you get to the point of holding a public hearing and going there. And so really we're putting out there that with this draft that we want four things to be considered: equity, fair market value, highest and best use, and taxable value as we think about things. There are multiple property disposal methods that we have used, and really this is just putting them all out there in sort of the entree selection type of thing, which always would come back for council before approval, before any property was sold. So sealed bid, we use this quite frequently, especially with a lot of our vacant lots, just to get something out there that then determines fair market value. This can always be used to determine fair market value, regardless of whether you have one interested party or more interested party. Live auction or online auction, we did this with the old fire station. That worked to basically get a wider distribution of bidders and see the price go up pretty nicely as well in that. We've also listed property with the realtor. This is one that makes sense kind of where we're at with this one right now. I think the best future use is going to be the Edgewood Industrial Park. We're going to end up with I think 4 or 5 or probably 6 lots when we're done with that, and that listing it with the realtor is going to be the best way to have them determine a market value and then basically go from there. Direct sale, this is what I was talking about earlier, Councilmember Thompson, and when you have a fair market value that has already been determined, that we can accept that fair market value moving forward, that there's no other process that needs to take place. And then the final one, which we've used in a few instances, before most of you were on this council, the request for proposal process, this can only occur in an urban renewal area. So there's limited places that it can occur, but we've used this in the downtown for the sale of the old police station, as well as for the senior citizen center lots as well. So determining fair market value is really a key here, and that's the thing that I think to make clear. By giving away a property, namely alleys and things, and right away for $1, there really is not a fair market value exchange there. And so that's the thing where we need to be more cognizant of. That is not a process we can use for moving forward unless we have done that in a way where the full market says that that is only worth $1, such as through a bid process or listing with a realtor or some other method like that. So there are ways that we can do this, and these are referenced in past policies as well. One way is by determining adjacent land values, which we've done that before. That often puts, I would say, city staff in immediate arguments with those who are looking to acquire alleys and other things. And so it's not always been helpful. It'd be nice if we were all on the same page so that it was understood that that's what's there. Ultimately, the fair market value doesn't have to be that. It can be determined in a different way if the council would so choose, but I think it's keeping in mind what is the policy and that we can't just gift property if it's not been determined to be the fair market value. We've also hired an appraiser at times. We've listed the property with the realtor. We've requested bids on the properties. And then the other thing that we do have access to through Beacon is that you can pull up basically 6 months worth of property sales, and we can go back through those. So if somebody paid, $2,000 for the vacant lot next door to them, that would show up in like a 6-month property sale review, and we'd be able to look at it that way. Rights of way for procedure, there's kind of a specific procedure we have to do there with utilities and things and determining what must happen there before we then can go through the process. Vacant lots are typically these that we end up with after demolitions, and that we ultimately look at those, I would say, internally as there are some that could be more valuable than others just based on where they're located. A lot in downtown might have more value than one that is sitting far out in the northwestern side of the city that had a house on it at one point. So the other thing, just to make clear, is facilities with land. So that's really addressing any city facilities, any city-owned buildings where we would be looking to dispose of them as well. So all of this is really looking at, would come back before you as a discussion item when we're ready to sell things, and have you ultimately sign off on the means and method for determining that fair market value before we would actually take that step and make that happen. So this is just a first draft. Happy to bring it back if there's any questions or comments that you would have related to this, but I think it's a policy that needed to be updated, and it's one that has a lot more detail kind of about the different avenues that we can use that are legally available to us.
Pretty much for our information, you don't need a motion to direct staff to.
Well, I'd like this to come back because I've got my whiteboard is full of Post-it notes with people's contact information who are very interested in our lots, and so that's where I'd like to move forward on getting this back in front of the council on a resolution if there's no changes that are needed.
Would anybody like to move that we direct staff to do that?
I'd like to suggest a change, Your Honor.
Okay.
I don't like the idea of sealed bids. We had one property owner that overpaid for a lot, and there was no way, I was advised legally, there was no way to go back and let them lower that bid. I think, your four things, equity, fair market value, highest and best use, and taxable value. Highest and best use, we don't even need to play into that because we have zoning ordinances. So best use is anything that fits that zoning of where that property is located. Equity, fair market value, the fair market value is what the population is willing to pay. So I really think we only need one process, and that's an auction. It'd either be it online or be it a public auction in person, because, if there's only two people interested, that is the market. And I think we can streamline this, and everything we have, we let those people interested bid on it fairly against each other in an open forum, or Can we list property on Gov Deals? Can everything go online? I mean, it can land, I mean, I don't know if land can go on Gov Deals or if it's just, property, equipment.
Yeah, land can go on Gov Deals, you can do that. My concern is just the ability to try and attract a larger audience. Ultimately, that's why we put things out to bid and we post it publicly, is we're letting the people that are interested know, but we're also trying to expand our market. Gov Deals would certainly do that. Gov Deals just takes it out from like the local standpoint and makes
Yeah.
it.
I mean, you're reaching the world. If you want to attract a bigger audience, and again, let the market, I believe in the free enterprise system, let those interested determine the fair market value. We don't need an appraiser, we don't need anything. And again, the win for us, it gets it back on the tax rolls, there is no value to it. Like all these vacant lots that we have, they're not really city property. I mean, we're probably lucky the county isn't taxing us for them because they're not truly tax exempt. They're not city property being used as city property. I just think that, let the neighbors fight over it in an open forum, either be online or auction. I don't know why we need to get so complicated with this.
The way the policy was written was to provide options, so that ultimately you as the council are still the ones who are selecting the options. And so if I come back to you with a list of these vacant lots that I say, I'd like to put these out for a sealed bid, you could direct that they all be put out for an auction and how that would be done. I will say, the auction process will take more staff time than issuing a sealed bid. And so that's a consideration to take in there too, because it's not something that we can do. It's something that we have to hire a contractor to manage. We're issuing then a request for proposal for auction services. It turns into a lot more work. Now, there will certainly be times when that is going to be necessary to do, and that's what I would recommend. But I'm not recommending that we just leave that as our only disposal option in this policy.
Well, I am recommending that we do that because putting a posting on Gov Deals doesn't take any time at all.
It certainly does take time. You have to manage the account. You have to manage the listings. If something doesn't sell or you relisting, there's a lot more that goes into it than just saying we're going to auction off a piece of property. Just like there's more that goes into it that says we're going to issue a sealed bid. Yeah, there's drawing up of documents, there's sending it out, notifying, publishing in the newspaper. There's more that goes into it, but more goes into managing land on an auction site than does in sending out bids and then opening bids on a certain date.
Have you seen any research that indicates what would get us the highest value for these sales? Has the League of Cities done anything? We can't be the only city with this question.
Yeah, so I would say other cities, basically, a lot of times they'll just directly negotiate with who is next door, essentially, if that's who is interested. Our problem that we have is we typically have more than one interested party in these properties, and so that's where I don't want to be. There's certain times where it makes sense to split the parcel if it's of a size that's not developable, or is one that fits the neighborhood where you have very tight yards and things like that. But yeah, I was gonna say most cities do things very differently than we do here on this one.
Other council comments or questions? Still looking for a motion.
I'd make a motion to keep all of our options open. I think, the online auction is a good tool, but I don't think we should hem ourselves in and let that be our only tool. So I'd motion for what we have here in the proposal to go forward.
Is there a second to that motion?
I would second that.
Okay. Any public discussion? Well, any other discussion up here? And if not, any public discussion? Roll call it is.
Lottiehoff,
Yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
Thompson,
No?
Walker,
Yes.
Hoop,
No.
Kell,
Yes.
Okay, that carried as well. And Dex, we can see the thumbs up sign now because we can get you back on camera here. That carried on to discussion item number 31, chapter 151, moving buildings permit.
Yes, Your Honor. This is part of the strategic plan review of license and permits. Currently, there is a city issue permit for moving a building, and that is routed through the city clerk's office. Staff is recommending that this process now go through the Public Works Division. We have created an application that applicants need to submit with their routing and traffic control plan. We have updated the ordinance to meet the insurance requirements per the code. Staff recommended removing the requirement for written consent from abutting property owners and updating the time requirements so we don't do it on holidays or weekends. Part of this amendment would also update the appeal process. Currently, the ordinance reads you appeal to the city council, but we'd like to change that to appeal to the public works director, and or if it was denied, and then it would go to the city council. The current permit fee is $25. Staff recommends raising that to $50 to cover public works staff time to supervise the move, and then if it is a large load, it would be a $200 fee. Could take any questions.
Thank you. And you're looking for direction to approve that by a motion tonight as well, is that right?
Yes, we would do a motion, and then we'd move forward with the ordinance revision.
Okay, I'd call it for either a motion or for discussion.
Your Honor, if I may.
You may.
Alicia, this just pertains to them moving it on a public right-of-way, right?
Correct, yes.
So if they move it on their yard, I mean, move the garage over, doesn't matter.
Yep.
Yeah, I think your fee's too low. You know, you're saying about taking work, I mean, there's a lot of work involved with, there's Public Works is probably gonna have to take some signs down and do things like that. You know, we haven't had a lot of movement of houses, but, I mean, your time to who contracts with Alliant Energy and MediaCom and tree service and all that?
Heather Thomas, Public Works. It's written in here in the ordinance where it's the mover's responsibility to contact anything as far as signage goes, utilities goes, so the city would not be directly involved with that requirement.
But you'd be your staff taking a stop sign down and putting it back up, right?
That would be their responsibility.
You're gonna let the public
Well,
move?
let me phrase, stop sign's probably not a good one. I don't anticipate where the size of the object being moved would be necessitate a stop sign being moved. There are other instances more prevalent, like utility lines that are overhead in those types of scenarios, in which case they need to contract directly with the utility company.
What if it's a street light, overhead street light?
We would recommend that they would go in a different location and a different route.
Okay. Yeah, I think your $50 is pretty low for someone getting out and moving a house down a street, so, thank you, Your
How
Honor.
often does this happen?
It doesn't.
In the past 2 months that I've been here, we've had 2 of these.
Really?
There's some talk about having that huge White House next to the Willard Mansion if enough funding could be obtained to move that one. Any other council comments, though, about this? All right, we don't have a motion on the floor.
Move for approval.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
I didn't call for public comment, did I do now? And seeing nobody rushing to the mic, let's vote.
Thompson,
Sure, yes.
Walker,
Thumbs up on that one, yes?
Hoop,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Lottie Hoff,
Yes.
Schneider.
Yes.
Thank you for the work on that one as well. On to the next one, first draft of the strategic plan for 22-23.
Yes, so we met, as you will recall, on the 29th of November in person to go through and start to put forward a vision for the next few years. And what I've done is basically combine that here in a few different ways. So kind of one of the first things that we reviewed in that session was the SWOT analysis, which was a little bit clunky because Susan didn't have what we had updated in 2020. And so we basically did go through and provide some updates, and then looking at what we had adopted in early 2021, I did kind of mesh that with what changes we had made. And so I'm looking to hear if there's anything that should change on this document here tonight, or if we'd like to postpone it for a later meeting for further discussion.
Your Honor, I would move that we table this until after the budget, all the budget meetings, because this is the first time that any of us are seeing this, and it was my understanding we were supposed to see this right after that strategic planning session. So I would say with the new staff on the council, that this requires a little more thought, and I would say, I would move that we table it till after the budget, all the budget meetings are over.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I second that.
Okay. Any further discussion by council or public? Roll call.
Hoop,
Yes.
Kell,
No.
Lottiehoff,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes,
Walker,
We can't see you now, sorry.
Yes.
Thank you.
Your Honor, can I have clarification that when there's a motion to table and you say the end of the budget process, do you mean the first meeting in April after you have adopted the budget? When would you like to have this come back?
well, it's the first 5 meetings of the year, right? They're the big ones. These first 3 in January and the first 2 in February that are gonna take the most of our time.
So that would, that would be probably.
I
the-
don't really think we should push a strategic plan out to April. I guess that was not my intent. I'm sorry, I should have clarified that. I was thinking like, well,
Because it's
the Fed-
March then
the-
if it's not April.
don't we have a meeting on February 28th?
We do have a meeting on February 28th, but there will still be some budgetary items that will.
But that one's always just little housekeeping at the end, wasn't it?
Well, I should say the budget process all depends upon you at
Well, yeah, it
this
depends
point.
on us.
So, yeah, it depends on what we'll be doing at that time.
March 14th then is, I mean, we need to revote that then?
I just wanted clarification to make sure that was agreed upon of when it would come back, because I'm not intending to make any changes to it. So what you have in your packet will be what will come back on March 14th.
And I'll assume, unless I hear otherwise, that the person who seconded it would agree with that, and all the affirmative voters would as well. And if I'm wrong, speak up now. Okay.
Because that gives us plenty of time to add things to it also, right? Because wasn't that part of that meeting was, again, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought we were said, this is, because none of us ever saw what finally got put together.
Well, and to clarify, since we're in discussion, so I was not going to bring the draft back to a council that was not going to be the one to implement it. So it was always intended to come to the first meeting in January when the 3 new council members had taken their seats. So that was always the plan, because it made no sense to present it to 3 council members who were not going to be.
No, I'm not saying present it, I'm just saying I thought we were going to get a draft to all of us after that meeting. I thought that's what someone jump in here, help me.
I would agree. I thought, my understanding was we were going to see this prior, but
No, so Susan's work basically stopped on that day, so
Okay.
it was where, and like I said, my intention was that it would not come back before the council until this meeting, so it was not something that I prioritized against other items until this meeting. So, but what I would prefer is that you bring your ideas to that March 14th meeting so that they can be discussed publicly, and they're not something that you're just intending for me to incorporate for you, that you all talk about them together against what's been proposed as well. Is that-
I'll assume
Sure.
that go ahead, Dex.
The reason that I'm asking for an extension is because although we did get together and put some things on the board, I agree with Councilman Thompson that we have not had an opportunity to discuss this and bring things back to you, some line items, including some discrepancies we may have with our goals in terms of what we thought were in consensus on to what is listed in simple, broad bullet points. So I do appreciate the time. I understand that this is the product that you're providing, but I do want some time to go through this, bring some feedback back to you, and get into the minds of some of the other council members as they reflect upon this work.
I agree with Dex.
Yeah, and that's fine. My intention was, this is totally up to you for whatever your timeline is, but please note that there are probably some items in here that I had put with dates that would be prior to a March 31st deadline, that deadlines and things will change at this point. So March 14th we'll be discussing, and then it's potential that March 28th would be when the soonest time a final product can come back to you. So that's going to just change the timeline on some things, just so you're all aware.
Okay. I did have a chance to study it today. It took a while, and it obviously took you a long time to put this together, so appreciate that. All right, on to our next discussion item.
Yes, so we have our first draft of our capital improvement plan, and again, this is not an approval tonight, this is just getting you familiar with what is in that plan. And so my plan is to sort of run through just one of the documents here to just talk a little bit about the funds. I would appreciate stopping along the way if you have questions about something or would like more information about something that we can bring back to you at the next meeting as well, because this will come back in a second draft on January 24th, and then ultimately can take as many draft forms as you would like before you have something before you. So just starting with Fund 030, this, if you look at the breakdown of our tax levy, there's 67.5 cents per every $1,000 of taxable value that goes towards this fund. And so it is our CIP fund, our capital improvement plan fund, which really meets the general needs of every department in the general fund as far as capital improvements. This is a voted tax levy. This was voted in a number of years ago, and if we didn't have it, think about trying to push this many needs into our general fund budget, because that would typically be how these would be funded. So we are very lucky to have that tax levy. So this covers basically some minor airport work, our wayfinding signs, copier replacement through multiple departments, fire department equipment, as well as all of our IT needs are budgeted through here as well. And as well as the library, and you'll see kind of the big project here is still the mobile services unit, or bookmobile. This is also a fund where we've been trying to prioritize meeting the needs of some of the priority parks in the Parks and Rec Master Plan that don't require a significant large expenditure project to make that happen. So we try to break it out so each year there is one park that's getting a lot of attention, rather than trying to piecemeal things amongst a lot of different parks. And then we also have our police vehicles and equipment and things through here as well. Any questions on Fund 030? Okay, Fund.
Your Honor, I do have a question. I'm just going to ask a favor. When you talk about any of these funds, I would like to know which ones are the American Rescue Plan.
Yep.
That money can flow into that specific fund.
Well, American Rescue Plan money can be used for any capital project. Well, I shouldn't say any capital project, but I mean, there would be a lot of, we have a Fund 389, which is the American Rescue Plan Fund. So I think that's probably the best way to answer that question.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Fund 031 is our building maintenance fund. This has been where we have deposited sale proceeds of facilities. This is where $80,000 of the fire building went to basically beef up our budget for taking on repairs of our various facilities that we have. We have started putting in some items for the new police and fire building that are larger maintenance items that are coming on board. One thing to note is just that we do, if we were to install a new boiler for City Hall and separate ourselves from YSS, that project is going to be the one that sends us into a negative balance. So there will be some discussion that we'll need to have at some point in the future about replenishing this fund, whether it's with bond proceeds or reallocated from another bond or some other source. If no questions, I'll move forward to Fund 032, which is really tied to 030. This is where we've put some of our large fire equipment purchases. This one we will go back. There's going to be changes between 030 and 032. We do have another purchase coming up in fiscal year 2026 of $175,000, and as you can see, we didn't get this one to the point where we could take things. You can't remove one piece one place without messing up a whole bunch in another place. So we'll be looking at how do we get $25,000 more into this fund or into this fire truck purchase or remount of a fire truck in fiscal year 26 to make sure that's showing as a positive balance. Fund 110 is the road use tax fund, which has quite a few different needs coming out of it. It meets both equipment needs as well as some larger project needs that we've kind of talked about. We have not started making any payments to the DOT or received any bills from the DOT from the South Center Street median improvement work and the other work that was part of that project, including some storm sewer work. We are including the engineering for the initial engineering to get us to the point where we have a project for South Center Street Viaduct for 2023 did come out of here. We're proposing the same thing would happen in 2026 when the next repair would happen. We are also showing two other projects out of here that we will still be discussing at some point here in the near future. Unity Point Secondary Access, that is a project that is definitely still in the works, and it's one that we are paying for the difference from what it would be to construct from a private drive to a public street. So that will hopefully be going out to bid here in the next few months. Same with South 7th Avenue Extension. We're still working on that one as well. That is to extend South 7th Avenue south of Olive Street to accommodate the apartment buildings the developer JBS is working with. We also have just general kind of street funding each year that really becomes subject to the Public Works Director's spending. And then this is where we also have our Railroad Quiet Zone project budgeted for anything that is not happening in the Union Pacific right-of-way. And so we do have bond funds that were borrowed in 2019, which you'll see in a different fund, but this is where that portion of the project is coming from to widen the street and to replace sidewalks and do things like that. Streets has a lot of equipment needs, and so those are listed. Same with our utility area. We have some different things that need to happen there as well. Moving on then, local option sales tax. This is just for the capital designation, which is no longer having funds go towards it. So this is spending it down, and we are spending it down essentially on two projects that were planned, but the way budgets are proposed right now, and we'll know more in the near future here. The Edgewood Extension, all of our local costs are being covered with about $1.4 million. And then the Creekside Estates, this is just our cost. There is a developer cost to that as well, which is reflected in a different fund to get the total project cost. And then one of the things to show that makes more sense in terms of the balance. So originally, the council had said to use council-designated local option sales tax to fill in a gap on the South 7th Avenue extension, and we placed sale proceeds from the Viejo Bluff sale of about $248,000 into Fund 121 for that purpose. Looking at the way this looks right now, we would potentially have enough capital property or capital lost to be able to make that South 7th Avenue extension work. All of this really depends on where things come in on a bid level.
Your Honor, Jessica, did I miss it somewhere in these worksheets? Why isn't the Lottie Hoff's fishing pond under the Edgewood extension also?
Because that is to be funded with ARPA funds. So it's showing in ARPA, completely ARPA, no other funds. So. Miscellaneous capital grants, this accounts for our state and local grants, and so we've got two for Pickleball Pocket Park and then applying for some traffic safety improvement grants moving forward. We also have a Fund 133, which is kind of mistitled with Miscellaneous Public Works. It's more of our federal grants that we receive for small projects, and so we've received a grant for Elks Park, and then hopefully we'll receive a grant for the Coliseum generator. And then we get into just kind of some funds where we set a balance for the police department to utilize funds, but there's not necessarily a very specific project that's happening in those funds. Library gift fund, we do have two projects listed, which is basically an accessory building for the mobile outreach vehicle, and then finishing out the payment on that vehicle as well in fiscal year 23. Seized assets is another one of those police funds. And then here's where we get into the RISE grant fund, which is where we've got all of our federal funding accounted for with the Edgewood Extension project, as well as a Waterworks contribution towards that project as well. And so the thing that I would encourage you, if you want more about this specific Edgewood Extension project, it is in the project worksheet And if you just go in and basically search by that name, you will be able to find it there. And so that's got things broken down in more of a detail. When we show things by fund, it's really breaking it out where you've got a piece here, a piece here, a piece here on some of these projects. But we do show that based on our potentially excess local funds, that project is sitting pretty well right now. The airport, I do want to touch on this one because it does show that we have some leftover money by the time we receive our 2 future federal grant payments to reimburse this project. This number is slightly deceiving because there are some projects that are outside of the scope of the terminal and hangar that need to be completed, and we're putting those together right now, hoping to get those completed as soon as possible. And so those will likely come back to you for approval, assuming they exceed my purchasing authority. But there is a little bit more there to do. But if in total we are looking at something where we don't have, or we have more than enough money, we could be talking to you about reallocating some bond proceeds related to this. 353 is our future project fund, and so we're going to talk about this under that debt capacity worksheet, so I'm going to skip that. 355, our dangerous and dilapidated building program. So we did borrow money in this year and then transferred in bond proceeds from another bond. So we have a healthy amount of money to get things started with. We also have a healthy amount of demolitions to still be done. And so I'm estimating that we likely have about $912,000 of demolitions to do this year, $750,000 next year. If you look at that worksheet, you can see how I've detailed out those projects and what that looks like. A normal year, which we haven't experienced in a long time, is about $120,000. So I am proposing that we would borrow some additional funds so that we can make sure that we can meet our obligations in next year to take down the properties that we own. Fund 360 is our 2019 general obligation bonds. And so the 2 things that we have going on kind of in this one, the Unity Point secondary access, allocating some of those bond proceeds to that. And then we just recently approved the bid for the construction of sidewalks around Fisher Elementary and Anson Elementary, and so that is in here. I will say this fund will change. The fund balance in this one looks slightly off, and so Brian DeMoss in Finance and I will be talking more about this one as we think there will be some additional projects to potentially allocate some funds to moving forward. Fund 362 is our 2020 A bond, and so we've been able to get most of the projects done in this one, with the quiet zone really being the one that is left, and then trail replacement happened this year, so that one is done. And then our 2021 bond, that's one that we're still working on right now, and includes the South Center Viaduct, which is in design, State Street, which is currently in design, and then a partial street improvement program. I know the street that has been identified by engineering to work on next, $3 million is not enough to get that street done. So there's more borrowing, which we'll talk about with Fund 353. And also related to the street improvement program, anytime you see an SIP, that means street improvement program, and Heather's gone through and tried to identify what those projects are. So we would like to be more specific where we can, and hopefully we'll be able to update that for you here in the future. 381 is where we have, it's our 2018 bond fund. 2 projects still that are wrapping up this year with our first street parking lot project, as well as our 12th Avenue sidewalk, both done in this current fiscal year. Fund 389 is the American Rescue Plan Fund, and so we are showing the $850,000 for the retention pond at Edgewood. The Edgewood Industrial Park, and then $2 million going towards the State Street construction. My one warning to you is, because this money is being used for things other than capital, like the impact project, that number is really less $400,000 for the donation, or not donation, the contract with YSS for impact. So it's really $730,000 that remains in those funds to be allocated. And then the Economic Development Fund is where we've put sort of the corresponding developer reimbursements with the project, portions of the project that they have as well, just so those zero out and are reflected in the capital improvement plan. This one, I'm going to spare you a number of pages. All I can say is that Bob Ranson and Brenda at the wastewater treatment plant are very on top of things. And this reads like a work order list for everything that needs to be done for the next 5 years. I will point out, we've talked a little bit about this prior, that we've hired Fox Engineering to work on the headworks engineering. That is going to be about an $8 million state revolving fund loan, which will be coming before you in the probably February timeframe to start the process of setting a public hearing to basically replace all of the headworks equipment, which is circa, I think, 1984, and a very big part of our wastewater treatment plant. So that's the big one to point out in all of this, but you can definitely see that Bob and Brenda take their responsibilities of outlining everything that needs to be replaced and when it needs to be replaced. And then we talk about just general sanitary sewer rehabs and repairs. We've dedicated some of this to the State Street project to pay for specific sanitary sewer, as well as then to the South 7th Avenue Extension project. And then the other very large project, which will probably tie in with that, or the plan is to tie in with that state revolving fund loan, is this point-in-place repair of sanitary sewer lines. More to come on that as it's under design right now, currently using cash from the wastewater fund to do that.
Your Honor? The South 7th extension, is that number adjusted to just the little stub, or was that the number that was set up to go all the way across?
It's, well, all we're doing is the little stub.
Okay, so that's what this number
Yes.
represents, is just this, okay, Heather's shaking, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Transit fund, so fiscal year 24, we're looking at replacing a new bus. I will say that there's stuff in the federal infrastructure bill that could result in some new bus opportunities coming earlier. We don't know exactly what that looks like yet, so we've kept on with our fiscal year 24 amount, which does have a local contribution to it. And then we get into our stormwater fund, where we do have a few different projects that are happening, where there will be different payments. You can see pickleball, these first three are already done. There is an amount going towards State Street and South 7th Avenue as well for that. There's also equipment that's coming out of here, and then looking at some other just general things. One of the things that I did not correct on here, so this dredging and settling ponds for $600,000, we are looking at putting that in fiscal year 26 as a borrowing item, and that shows up a little bit later on. So we'll make that correction in the next draft. And then finally, compost. So you can see we've got some cleaning up planned, as well as then looking at a vibratory screen, knowing that it's going to have to be user fees that support that. And so that's kind of the big rundown. Any questions on any of the specific projects or funds?
I have one last question, Your Honor.
You may ask it.
On the compost, historically, what is a true operational number of the compost facility? I mean, it's not that 100,000, is it?
No, that's just the beginning fund balance. We'll have to go back and get that, because with the tornado and the derecho.
I know, we need to adjust those. But
Yeah.
can you get me like a history of so many years without the two?
Yeah, I was gonna say, we'll put that on our list of things to
Just
email
email
out
it?
between now and then, and yes, we'll get that out, so.
The true expense picture, I guess.
Yeah, so
Okay.
we'll do that, but like I said, we'll need to exclude
understand.
2018 and
Yeah.
2020.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
Sure.
Now to kind of the document that will exist in a lot more conversation moving forward, because I think we like to say, this is presented for purpose. We would like to have something with kind of the future projects adopted with the budget, but we always come back to discuss it before any borrowing. And so this is all, I've placed the fund number over here on this side so that you could see what fund it matches up with in the source document, source and use document. So we've got 2 airport runway projects where we'll have a local match that are pretty far out. But we do have a number of what I would call park projects that are kind of itching to go in the next fiscal year if there's a possibility to do them. So this number up at top is what we have available today to borrow with the 70% debt capacity that was approved by the council last year. And then what I've kind of taken it along, I've not subtracted out these numbers from these, but basically just by paying off debt, you start to get into what numbers are available each year where there happens to be a negative below. So just to run through these real quick, Kiwanis Park has a number of needs that really did not fit in Fund 030. To pull $235,000 out of basically a $600,000 a year revenue was going to put way too much towards parks and get us unbalanced for our other capital needs, so we put it here. To go to Riverview Park improvements, we don't have concepts to show you tonight, but just in looking at sort of what a first phase needed to be was all stormwater work to basically increase the capacity of the retention ponds that are there, as well as clean them up and make them more accessible and aesthetically pleasing than what they are currently. And so there is about, with engineering and design, there's about $2 million worth of work. That also does include some amounts to do some minor improvements on some of the buildings and facilities that Parks and Rec has been meaning to do as well. West End Park Phase 2, we narrowed this down to include just the construction of a restroom and concession stand building and not doing a parking lot and other improvements that were originally planned. But we have kept those items out there in a future fiscal year. Farmers market improvements. There's a need to do something. I think as we've all sat around as staff and thought, we're going to open up this brand new State Street in 2020, late 2022, parts of it, and mostly in 2023. What can be done to at least enhance the aesthetics there? And so this is minimal improvements of a bathroom and some sidewalk. And so that's really all that we're proposing, but bathrooms and sidewalks are not cheap at this point either. We also are proposing Park 101. When 101 West Main comes down, that is going to leave a vacant space. Our whole goal will be to reuse that property for a commercial reuse if it exists. Numbers are going to be tight because it's a small lot, and so it probably comes to a question of how much do you want to incentivize building out of the city's future TIF or other coffers versus looking at a pocket park space on Main Street. So that's kind of what that would just $250,000, again, minimal improvements with some planting, some lighting, and some seating and other things. The trail connection from the Freedom Rock to the skate park, we're still at $600,000 with that. That does include a new bridge with that as well. So that project is back for this year. And then we've put in a placeholder of $3 million for the street improvement program. That can always change or adjust based on however much you want to borrow or whatever projects you want to fund. And then we've got more sidewalk gap projects around the Hoagland Elementary School, so that's about $900,000 of work. And then I've placed all of the $600,000 that I think would need to be on hand to fill out a few years of the D&D program. And then ignore that $60,000 there, as we'll change that because that $60,000 or $600,000 for the dredging of the detention ponds is really there. So first blush tonight, again, I know this is a lot of work, and so if there's any comments to be offered, I'm happy to take those, happy to have discussion. But this, again, it is a first draft. It is definitely coming back on the January 24th meeting and can come back on any other meetings you would like it to come back on.
Yes, sir.
After we received our street report, it was painfully pointed out that $3 million a year, which is what we normally spend, we're falling behind with our streets. And I really think we need to be looking at going higher than $3 million. Because if we're going to fall behind at $3 million, next year we're going to be behind further than that, and our streets are going to get worse and worse. I know he said that, if you really wanted to make an impact, it'd be $10 million. Well, I don't think we can do $10 million. But I do think that we can do an improvement on the 3 million. The streets are becoming noticeable, and boy, front end repair is expensive. So that's my first blush on it.
Is there a dollar amount that you would like us to see kind of fit into the equation?
5.
Per year?
For this year.
You done? Your Honor, I have a question about the sidewalk gap projects. What schools are we moving on to next?
It's Hoagland is the 900,000, and then the 500,000 ends up being, I think, in some assorted areas, kind of in the 3rd Ward, think Southridge, and kind of that neighborhood where there's just gaps here and there. And then I believe that the 550,000 is Palmer and Bowen Streets, that there is sidewalk missing in those areas. So, and then that is all that we truly have programmed at this point.
That finishes the grade schools then?
Yes.
Jessica, I missed it. Which detention ponds are being dredged? All of them?
I don't know that 600,000 would do all of them.
No, that's just the first year of it. I would think that would probably do 1, maybe of the 3 that they're looking at.
Okay, but we don't know which one yet. First.
That hasn't been determined.
Okay.
Hoagland.
Well, there's definitely still some things we need to clean up on our side. And so, as I mentioned, as we've gone through this, we've started to really narrow down where are those past bond proceeds where we can make some recommendations for you to allocate elsewhere. One project that I didn't talk about in Fund 360 was the Anson Park Shelter. That project is just not going to happen. We have 270,000 on hand, so we will probably be asking you to take a project off of this list that is a park project and allocate those funds towards that, or multiple projects. So just know that those are decisions, and those are things that will be coming before you, probably outside of the budget process, just to give us an idea of where we're at and what we can move forward with what funding sources we already have on hand. So no action needed on that, and so it's Diana's turn.
Meaning we're going from CIP to taxable evaluation.
Good evening, Diana Steiner, Finance Director. So on December 29th, we finally got our evaluations from the county, and it's not great news. We were hoping for a little bit better valuation boost, but we didn't quite get that. So I just kind of wanted to go over this, historical purposes. Most categories did go up. The residential went up, commercial, industrial, multi-residential. However, the gas and electric utilities went down. For gas and electric, it's actually an excise tax, so it's based on what's generated and what is consumed. I talked to somebody at the state today because last year when it dropped by $9 million, we asked why, and they said it was a correction from the prior year. So when it dropped again, like what's going on? So apparently Alliant is just generating a lot less, which impacts us. And then down here is the rollback. So for the new people, many years ago, the legislature decided that they wanted to roll back everyone's property taxes. So then they started taking the 100% valuations and multiplying it by these percentages, so you can see historically what they are. So just out of curiosity, the FY22 residential rollback was 56.4%, so it dropped by 2.28% for this fiscal year. So if you calculated that same percentage of 56.4 for this year, we would have generated another $187,000 in the general fund. So you can see that does have a big impact of what's going on with these percentages. Multi-residential will continue to go down until it hits the residential rate, so it's going down by 3.75% every year. Commercial and industrial, we do receive backfill for this. During the last legislative session, they decided to phase it out over 8 years for us, 5 years for bigger cities. So we will not get a backfill anymore after the end of the 8-year period, but it's phased out year by year. So the charts just kind of show you how volatile things are going up and down. But do you have any questions on this worksheet?
See anybody raising a hand?
So the answers on the gas and electric utilities, I mean, we have wind farms, we have the natural gas plant. So are the wind farms not in this whole thing? Because I don't know, the number just doesn't make sense to me that they'd be generating that much less power in the county.
We don't actually have any in city limits, and so it's just the natural
Okay,
gas
that's
plant.
true, it would be, you're right.
And my understanding is that the power plant in Marshalltown is kind of like a backup, so
Yeah.
when power gets low, then they start it up
Gotcha.
and run it.
Yep.
So, okay, the next spreadsheet I'd like to show you is for taxable valuations and how it affects our general fund. So here's our total dollar amounts for this fiscal year, $925 million of valuations, which is an increase of 17 million. Percentage-wise, an increase of 1.872%. So for the general fund, all we get to take is $8.10 and a 27-cent emergency levy. So you can see what those total dollar amounts are. Let's make it a little bigger. So for fiscal year 23, we'd be getting $142,428 more.
We can have a pretty
Which-
big party with that.
If we didn't have to increase in expenses, yes, that's true. So, anyway, you can see, valuations drive everything, so it's up and down. So we were rather disappointed when we got our valuations this year. Any questions on any of this information?
Diana, just right off the top of your head, what was the backfill that the city received this last year?
I have it in my next report, if you can wait. I'll let you know that. Down here somewhere. Okay. Ready to go on? Okay, so the budget process is that Jessica and I meet with every department head and we go over their budget, which is going to look like this. So this first column just tells you where we were at the end of last fiscal year, what we actually spent. The next column is our total budget that was adopted last March for this current fiscal year. You have, next column is the year-to-date, which is through December. And then the next column is an amended budget for this current fiscal year. And then the last column is our FY23 request. So all the departments work off a report that looks like this. So we wanted to bring it to mayor and council to see if there's any changes that you would like on this. So just as a reminder, wages did increase for the mayor from $7,500 to $11,000, and for council, $3,000 to $5,500 per year. But as new council members, you may need to go to some training, so we wanted to keep those items in there if that's of interest to you. or if you have any other changes you want to make.
Your Honor?
Yeah.
Diana, what's even in there that we can change? I mean, you know how bare bones a lot of this stuff
Yeah.
is. I mean, is there any fluff in here at all?
And basically training and supplies, conference expenses, operating supplies.
I think what we were looking for was there anything you wanted to add to this budget that we would then go back and add in, knowing that there's really not much to cut?
I can't see anything.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Council or public? Okay. On to 7.
Okay. So when we put the budget together, the property tax revenues are pretty much the last thing we do. And then we look to see where we're at. And like I said, it wasn't very good news. We're currently about $600,000 in a deficit for FY23 budget. So I kind of want to go over some assumptions that we put together in our budget. First of all, wages. So the union contracts are at 3%, except for the police department is at 3.25%. So like in other years, we also made the non-union people 3% as well. That can be changed. So we'll discuss that in a little bit. Assumptions, our health insurance, it went up 10% this current this current calendar year, starting January of 22. And so we put a 10% increase in there for that. Regular insurance, property and auto insurance, we pay that in April. April 1st is the renewal on our policy. After talking to the insurance agent, he said figure 12% increase this year and 12% next year. The insurances are a separate levy, so whatever we spend, we levy for that and bring the money back in. But when you look at the report, you will notice those line items are increasing, and that's why. So like we talked about, the backfill. So for fiscal year 23, the backfill reduction is $28,000. We tried to adjust our revenues where we thought they'd be more realistic. And as you know, as homeowners, your utilities at home are going up. And when you go to the gas station, gas is going up. So we adjusted those items as well. And then we have maintenance agreements that are, built in 3%, 5% increases every year. So a little bit later, we'll look at the actual report, and I think you'll pretty much realize that we're not raising much. So for today's meeting, we wanted to bring this to you right away since we are in a deficit, so you can help us solve it and figure out how we're going to get into balance. So we kind of made a little chart here. And so in years past, we as staff kind of put things together and then would bring it to you with the reductions already there. This year, we wanted to go ahead and tell you, the $600,000 we feel like we need, but we know we need to get into budget. So we want you to help us along the way and help us decide what to reduce. So we'd like to kind of get your feelings on each item. So the first one is to reduce the general fund conferences and travel by 50%. So our current budget is $60,000. $45,000 is for conference fees, and $15,000 is for travel. So would you be interested in us reducing that by 50% or any other percentage?
Your Honor?
Yes.
But we have no idea what that means, though. I mean, a lot of this stuff needs to happen, correct?
Well,
We have more than enough options in here for you to balance the budget regardless of the source. And so what I will say is we have a structural deficit. We've had a structural deficit for a number of years. We're presenting multiple ways in which you can do this, less revenue options because we've kind of been down that road already. And so we want to know, is this something you want to do? So are there 4 of you who want to do any of these items? And if there are, then when we come back on January 24th, that's when we'll have sort of combined together, this is what this looks like. And are you comfortable with a deficit or a surplus that would be shown? As a reminder, we did start this fiscal year with a deficit. We had approved $137,000 as a deficit for the start of this year. And then we came back in, I think it was August, and mentioned that there was an error in that, and it was actually larger, about, I don't know if you have the exact number.
yeah.
But it was higher because of a miscalculation of wages, and the action was to not do anything at that point. So we're trying to get to next fiscal year, just back to where you had approved, unless you're going to take actions that would potentially impact this current fiscal year too. So all we want tonight, I mean, I'm good, Your Honor, if you want to do just a simple motion in a second or up and down vote, and we can count hands as to what comes back. But I think that's what we want to provide, as much information as possible for you to say, I'm interested or I'm not interested.
Your Honor,
Yes, sir.
I would say, with all due respect, you and your department heads know what is necessary and what isn't. Obviously, we have a deficit. I would prefer that that you come back to us with what you're going to change to come back to a zero balance, of no deficit. I mean, no disrespect intended, but that's what you do.
And I guess where we're coming from is we've done that so many times in the past, and it's led to nothing. And so when we looked at what our schedules were to even get this agenda out by 4:30 on Friday, we didn't have the ability to go through and make a proposal. And quite frankly, we don't want to propose something that you aren't interested in. But I would say all of these things are viable options, and if you want to treat them all as viable options, we can come back to the next meeting with a proposal on them, except for, I will clarify, raising taxes, not a viable option. Accessing the cash flow fund, reserve fund, not a viable option. But I think that's where we'd be at, is all of these are viable options. And if you want us to put our numbers with them, we can certainly do that.
Any input that I look at them and think, well, like on conferences and travel, I have no idea how important it is. I assume some of those things are requiring recertification and that.
To be fair, Your Honor, we're to the point where importance doesn't really matter. We'll figure out how to make sure people are getting the required certifications, but that's the level that we're at this point, with a $600,000 deficit of, there's just some things we can't continue to do.
And again, these are just general fund employees. So, if you have a grant, the grant's going to pay for your training and travel. So we're not accounting for that in here. It's just the general fund.
So, Your Honor,
Yes, sir.
what this comes down to is the city of 27,000 does not generate the tax revenue to support the operations of the city. Is that correct?
At the level that we've been maintaining.
At the level we've been maintaining.
Right.
So we either need to borrow money, or we need to change the way we tax, or give away tax, I should say, or lower the level.
This isn't a one-time occurrence.
I understand.
Yeah, so
Understand.
borrowing just,
Right.
will compound the situation, but.
So again, with all due respect, the expectation of mine is that the department heads and the city administrator collectively, and again, no disrespect, but collectively, you're paid over $1 million a year in salary and benefits. This is your job. You need to come, in my opinion, you need to come to us with how to balance that budget. And then if there's something you're taking out that we think the taxpayers deserve, that's up to us to put it back in and then figure out how to fund it. I guess that's my take on it. You get us down to zero, show us what's got to drop out, what your priorities are, and if there's something we think the taxpayers deserve, my feeling is I'll put it back in and figure out a way to fund it. So I'm looking at this at an opposite approach.
But it could just be as simple as, okay, you're going to transfer the money from local option sales tax, then it's done. But is that really what you want to do in its entirety? I mean, that's why we're going through this list. I
Is
mean,
that what
there's
you want to
options.
do? Are you saying that you've done everything you can't get below the 600,000, so you want us to transfer 600,000 in?
We're saying that is option number 8 of what's really 12 options when you add in adjusting non-bargaining employee wage increase less than 3%. And so if there is no desire on the part of anybody to discuss this any further and you want us to come back, I'm totally fine with that. But this is something that is going to have to be moved on. We wanted to get this in front of you as soon as possible. I think the thing that, as Diana and I go through this, we value your input because we don't want to create something that ultimately you are going to vote no to or do not want to see. And so we feel that it's better to get your input on the front end where we have options, all of which are, except for 2, are viable options. But if you just feel blanket that this is what you want us to work with, we will definitely work with this to bring back a proposal on January 24th and likely again have something on January 31st to discuss as well.
I would like to see more details on all of these, except I'd prefer to give people the 3% raise. Inflation's real, and we'll experience attrition, and that's expensive too. So I think we allow the wage increases and let you guys tell us the details about each one of these items and how much potential savings there could be, maybe a couple different options. That's what I'd like to see. I don't know about everybody else.
Other input by others?
So we would kind of like a few decisions on a couple of items.
I missed that, I'm sorry.
We would like some decisions on a couple items.
Which
'cause
one
it's
should we
my time.
address first?
Well, number 5, the grant employee wages.
I would say, Diana, we'll just work with this and we'll leave that as it's budgeted currently. And then if that's something they want to discuss removing, then that can be discussed at the January 24th meeting.
Okay.
So
Anything else?
If you want input, Your Honor,
We do.
take out, I've said this before, we don't need to pay the chamber. We can take that money ourselves and do the job ourselves.
I disagree. We need the chamber.
Well, the hotel motel tax, Jessica was in conversations with them today. So we're looking at a reduction there.
we'll bring back a proposal on the 24th.
Okay.
I've had some discussion with them too. So, yeah, I think we can arrive at something that works there.
Okay,
I
that's
do
what
have
we-
a
Sure.
minor question. You said that the insurance is going to go up 10 or 12%?
The regular insurance, that's what he told us to budget for.
Okay. And then probably next year?
Yes.
Okay. And you're a PPO, correct?
The insurance I was talking about was liability and
Okay.
for vehicles and property.
How about employee?
The employee health insurance, 10%.
Okay.
It went up 10% this January, and we put in 10% for next year.
Okay. How much do city employees pay for their insurance?
I don't have that in front of me.
Probably a percentage, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a percentage and then a percentage of each increase. I can have Jill email you out what was given to employees with open enrollment so that you can see what that looks like.
Okay, thank you.
I had one more thought, Your Honor.
Okay.
Can we sell some of the vehicles that sit out here in the parking lot? I mean, it's not a big savings, but can we eliminate some of our overhead on those vehicles? I mean, if we're eliminating travel, you guys talked about then if we go, I see like the vehicles are assigned to departments. Why can't we go to 3 or 4 vehicles and have a carpool or a motor pool set up versus individual cars?
So that's not something I would recommend unless you are directing us to include this in the recommendation that we bring back on the 24th. That's just a one-time revenue, and so it's not actually structurally changing, so that's not anything that I would include in a budget deficit reduction conversation for the long term.
Other questions or ideas, comments?
So looking at some of these actions, just 1 through, let's say, 8, well, 7, because I think 8 alone can get us there. But if we go through 1 through 7, implement it, does that get us the 600,000, or is this just a starting point?
So it really, yeah, I mean, there's enough in an American Rescue Plan to do. The thing that I would encourage, though, with like American Rescue Plan and somewhat with local option sales taxes, those could be considered one-time sources, definitely American Rescue Plan. So I think what we'll do is we'll try our best to come back with a proposal that really hits at reduction of those ongoing costs as best as possible, to try and make that as something where we're again not having this conversation, next year and the year after.
Enough staff direction for you?
Mhm.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. On to number 7 out of 8 is mayor and council. No, we did that one. Number 8, general fund.
That was what we just did, Your Honor.
We did that too. We're down to public comment. My word, I didn't think we'd get home this early. All right, for public comment, members of the public may make comments on any item not in the agenda. Approach the mic, state your name and address on any items raised, and may not take any action on those in order to comply with open meetings laws. With that said, the microphone is open. And seeing no one rushing to grab the microphone, we will adjourn the meeting at 4:41 p.m. Thanks for coming.
7:41 p.m.?
So,
On Florida time.
I must be on Florida time.
That'd be California time, I think, or Hawaii time.
Yeah, boy, I thought my watch automatically adjusted.
Thank you, Dex. We'll disconnect now.
That's it?